is John Baker, Chairman of JEA, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Could we begin with the time of reflection, please? Okay. The agenda has been circulated. Can we get a motion to approve it, please?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Is there further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Please fasten driver's seatbelt.
Okay. Paul, can you give us a safety briefing, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, safety is a core value at JEA. Generally, when we're meeting together face-to-face, we talk about industrial safety, general safety. Today, it's ever more important to emphasize virtual safety in the pandemic. Just know that we've adopted a mask policy within the four walls of JEA facilities and plants and work sites. We're stressing washing our hands often and washing down any space within our facilities. We're stressing social distancing and ask everyone to continue to do that. And probably most importantly for us is our push to work safely at work and be safe at home. And that's my briefing, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And the safety results are spectacular. I congratulate you on that. Jody, could you help us with the sunshine law and the public record statement, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the board. The meeting of the JEA board this morning is being conducted by Webex technology and the virtual platform that we're allowed to do under the governor's executive order. It's been duly noticed as a virtual Webex meeting. Minutes will be taken, and we have quorum, so we're in good order to proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Randy DeFore, would you like to make some comments?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a brief update of what the City Council's up to. We are heavily focused on the budget. I'll show you what that looks like for those who have never seen the city budget looks like. So that's what I'll be working on when I jump off this meeting. And for those that you, hopefully you've heard, our president of the council, Tommy Hazuri, has been had a lung transplant. So we are now under the active leadership of Sam Newby, who I know will do a great job, along with Brenda Priestley Jackson. You may have also heard the JEA Special Investigation Committee, or the SIC Committee as we call it, met yesterday, and it is moving forward with the interviews of 5 additional witnesses. And those witnesses are Kevin Hyde, Michael Munns, Tim Baker, Sam Musa. I'm drawing a blank on the last one. The former chair of the JEA board.
Alan Howard.
Right, thank you, Alan Howard. And other than that, I will be dropping off when you get into your attorney-client section, but know that I am here to support you and whatever needs to be done. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. We're glad to have you aboard. Shall we move to the comments of the public?
Jody, do you want me to go ahead and go through the Webex controls and then open up for public comments?
Great. Thank you, Landon.
Not a problem. Okay. Once again, my name is Landon Todd, and for those that are new to the Webex technology, let me give you a brief overview of the controls. If you're joining us via the desktop interface or a smart device, such as a smartphone or tablet, you may move around the screen and will see a series of buttons at the bottom. The very first one that you may notice looks like a red microphone with a slash through it. If it is red, it means you are muted and will be on mute for the majority of the meeting unless recognized to speak. If you're recognized to speak and if you're asked to provide comment, you will click on that button and it will turn dark, gray, or black. This will mean, and I'm going to go ahead and mute everybody's line. I'm getting a little bit of background. There we go. Okay, once again, if you're red, it means you are muted. This will mean that you are if it is dark gray or black, this will mean that you are unmuted and people can hear you. I do ask that you will use the mute option to mute your line when you are not speaking. This will allow us to reduce the amount of background noise and have the most productive meeting possible. Also, if you would like to see who is participating in today's meeting, you can look over 3 more buttons to find an icon that looks like a person. If you click on that, it will bring up the participant list. If you are on a mobile device, it will pull up in front of everything. And if you've joined from your desktop machine, it will come up on the right side of your screen. This will allow you to see a long list of individuals who have joined the meeting. Also, we have enabled the chat capability. If you touch your screen or scroll next to the person icon, you will notice an icon that looks like a caption bubble. If you click on that, it will bring up the chat window. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded, and I ask that you please be professional. But if you run into any difficulties, you can chat me directly, or if you would like, you may type comments to everyone. Now, during today's meeting, when presentations are shared, you may desire to zoom in to more easily read the content. Within the Webex toolbar, located on the left-hand side, you will notice 3 key options. The first is the icon with a plus positive indicator. This will allow you to easily zoom in on content on your display. The second icon with a minus negative indicator will allow you to reverse and zoom out of the content. And lastly is the icon with 4 arrows expanding, which will allow you to maximize a presentation to your current Webex window. Now, due to circumstances resulting from COVID-19, a historic number of employees are rapidly transitioning to remote work. Webex meetings have never been more vital for staying connected. For some users, meeting experiences may be impacted due to the strain on service providers during internet and phone service degradation. Here are the top tips you can take to get the best meeting experience in any situation. Number 1, close background applications. Even if you're not using them, applications on your device are using precious resources. Before your meeting or during the meeting, close any applications and browser sessions that you're not using. Number 2, switch to call-in audio. If your internet audio and video experience or call me back feature does not work, you can keep collaborating. Call in using the dial-in numbers in today's meeting invitation to join via your cell phone or landline. Number 3, hardwire your workstation. Depending on your location and how many people are using the same Wi-Fi around you, you may see slower speeds on Wi-Fi rather than on a wired Ethernet connection to your computer. And number 4, please contact JEA's Webex support team. If you're having any difficulties, our support team is here to help and may be reached at webexsupport@jea.com. Now, those are the major controls of Webex. Now, for the public comments, we will be using the raised hand feature. If you're using the Webex client, this feature is located within the participant window. At the top of the list, your name will be visible, and to the right, you will notice a gray icon that looks like a hand. If you click it, it will turn blue, letting me know that you'd like to be recognized for comment. Now, for those that may have called directly in, there are 2 additional ways that you can notify me that you would like to provide comment. The first is by pressing *3 on your telephone. This will raise your hand, and then it will allow you to press *6 to unmute your line. If you unmute your line, please state your name so that everyone may hear who is speaking before providing comment. As we go through this meeting, I am the moderator and have the capability to mute everyone's line. I will only do so to ensure that the meeting runs smoothly. Now with that, we are coming up on 10 minutes after, and we'll go ahead and proceed with public comment section of the meeting. I will go ahead and ask Madrika if you would go ahead and unmute your line and see if there's any emails that need to be read into public comment.
I do not have any email public comments.
Okay. We will then run right into the second portion through the preferred method of raising your hand in the Webex client. For those that wish to be recognized for public comments, please go ahead and choose the preferred method of raising your hand. Okay, I have a raised hand. I'd like to go ahead and recognize David Brutterly. You may unmute your line now and go ahead and proceed while we put the 3-minute timer up to go ahead and start your public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is David Brutterly. I'm a trying to be retired professional engineer, has been active in the energy environmental sector for some 50 years. In this community, I helped advocate for liquefied natural gas to power our ships, natural gas, heavy-duty vehicles, electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell technology for use in specialty equipment, so on and so forth. I've been doing this for the past 25 some years. Have also been very active in advocating throughout Florida for coming up with business strategies and planning that would help this state transition to what I believe is absolutely essential to our long-term survival, which is significantly decreasing our pollution, our greenhouse gas pollution, as well as our water pollution sources. And I've spoken to the board on and off over the past 5 years with the theme that Jacksonville Electric Authority can drive this community, can lead by example to help this community transition to a 21st century economy that's based on ultra low carbon pollution technology, or technologies that eliminate carbon footprint and basically create good local jobs. I've supported the hiring of Mr. Zahn a year and a half ago because I heard from a man who was claiming to be an innovator, was looking for creative ways of bringing capital to this community to help invest in transitioning to what he agreed would be a 21st century utility. And frankly, I am extremely dismayed to find that I was betrayed by the man because he had a different agenda. That said, I hope that in the future we can put as much effort into helping transition JEA into a 21st century utility based on an ultra low carbon footprint and reducing our nutrient sources of water pollution that we're putting into figuring out the corruption that took place under this man's reign. And I would encourage all of you to trust the facts and the science, that interpretation of those facts. Final comment would be that, in my opinion, the COVID crisis we're facing today is a metaphor for the climate crisis. We're in a bad situation today because when political leaders could have believed the science and the experts and taken action, they instead used their political philosophy to make decisions rather than science and interpretation of facts. So I encourage you to take this climate problem we have seriously and act proactively to make JEA a 21st century electric utility that will lead this community to the 21st century. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. I'm still looking for other public comments. Mr. Baker, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line since we muted everyone's line. Chairman Baker, your line is unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is a...
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, I've got another raised hand for public comments as well. I'd like to go ahead and recognize Ron Gerdick. We will go ahead and present a 3-minute timer as well. Your line is unmuted if you'd like to go ahead and proceed with public comment.
Yes, I was. Good morning, everyone, and a special good morning to Dr. Haley. I'm calling about a problem we're having on Cedar Bay Road, north side of Jacksonville. To go through the entire problems we're having would take hours. and I want to focus on the JEA issues. There's an industrial complex being built across the street from our community. Power is being taken from Cedar Bay Road to the industrial complex. Trees are being cut down, our fences are cut down, our noise barriers are being removed, and basically our community is being destroyed. We would like all power for the industrial complex taken from the industrial side of the road, and no more poles, cut fences done on Cedar Bay Road. The last installation of a pole on Cedar Bay Road to provide power to this facility was performed on Father's Day, 7 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday by a JEA crew with police escort. We have been nothing but respectful. We've tried to use our councilman, Mr. Ferraro, which is another issue, to raise our concerns to JEA, and JEA has done nothing but come back to us, have told us they have every right to do what they're doing. JEA does not have a right to destroy my community, and I would like JEA to listen to the concerns we have and to let JEA know what you're doing to our community. We have many power poles up and down JEA. Putting more power poles between those poles creates a bunch of problems. We're unable to cut the median. The grounds from the power poles are being destroyed as the people cutting the grass come along. We don't need any more power poles along Cedar Bay Road. I just find it very hard to deal with JEA. Your attitude is we'll do anything we want to do. We have a right. I would like to get involved with this project and have JEA understand our concerns. Second issue, I'm running out of time. JEA is a dead-end street. There's a water treatment plant at the end of our road, Cedar Bay. We have trucks, cranes, all types of JEA vehicles running up and down our road. We would like JEA to look at accessing your water treatment plant via the industrial park and not Cedar Bay Road. There are many safety issues with JEA running up and down our street with your trucks. Our street floods. JEA cannot get out of your water treatment plant during hurricanes. JEA wants access to that water treatment plant via the industrial park. This is a win-win for everyone. I'd like you to appoint someone I can talk to and express my concerns to. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. For the remainder, for the preferred method, if there is anyone that would like to provide public comments, I am reviewing the list now. Please go ahead and use the Webex client to go ahead and raise your hand. We do have approximately 5 people that have dialed in. I will go ahead and go into the next alternative method to raise your hand. For those that have joined us via phone call, you may go ahead and press *3 on your landline to activate the raised hand feature. Once your hand is raised, I will go ahead and unmute your line, and we'll give you 10 seconds. While we're doing the 10-second countdown, if anybody would also like to put any public comments in written form, as mentioned before, the chat window is open. You may go ahead and present any public comments via chat as well.
Where is the chat?
Sure, I heard from an unmuted line. Chat is on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and mute all lines again, and then we will go ahead and proceed. Mr. Chair, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your line for you so we can go ahead and move forward. Give me one moment. Mr. Chair, your line is now unmuted, and we are good to proceed.
Thank you all for your comments. We hear them. We will pay attention to them. And Mr. Gerdick, we will get somebody to reach out to you. Thank you for letting us know. Next on the agenda is a special presentation. Paul McElroy, could you do that for us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. And it is my privilege and honor to introduce to the board and the board meeting, the attendees, Mr. Lee Bradley. We normally don't do this, but I want to recognize Lee, there you are, Lee, for his years of service at JEA. Lee is retiring after 50 years of service to JEA and our community. I was just awestruck when I saw that number and asked folks to go back and just double check. Just a little bit about Lee. He was born in Ohio and moved to Jacksonville with his parents at the age of 16. He graduated from DuPont High School in 1965, and he initially joined the Duval County Fire Department before he got smart and came over to JEA and became an integral part of our family. He began his career as an underground lineman apprentice in 1970, where he learned to splice and pull cable, install network protectors, relays, and network transformers. As the JEA changed, he moved and became an overhead line maintainer, and from there he worked his way up to a CMC working foreman, where he maintained his position since 1985. He married the love of his life, Ruth Bradley, who has been called home by the Lord. And we're sorry for your loss, Lee, but you were blessed with two beautiful children, Lee Bradley and Tracy, and they have graced you with two beautiful grandchildren, both girls. Your hobbies include past hobbies. I understand that Lee used to collect and restore muscle cars, but he's passed on that now to his biggest hobby of camping at Disney World and riding around in souped-up scooters in the park with his grandchildren. Something that was interesting about Lee, when he joined the JEA in Jacksonville, I'd like to look back at the 1970. In 1970, underground residential really wasn't a thing yet. It had been put into the code a few years earlier, but we had very, very little underground distribution lines, and we're certainly in excess of 50% now. The system consisted of mostly overhead 4 kV. We're now 26 kV, and the whole system has been changed out, expanded. When we looked at our generating plants back in 1970, it was 100% fueled by oil, bunker oil. And this one was near and dear to Lee's heart. The bucket trucks were few and far between, and you really had to work inclined fold to get your work done. I-95 was still being built from Phillips Highway towards St. Augustine. Mandarin was still rural, and Southside and Beach Boulevard was nothing but forest. Lee's got some great retirement plans after all the changes he's seen and all the contributions he's made to JEA and the Jacksonville community. And he's going to be settling down a little bit, taking it a little easy. But when he's not working, and we hopefully call him back to work with contractors in the event we have storm requirements, and he'll make new family adventures with his brand new boat. So we wish you well with that, Lee. And Lee, thank you very, very much. We're very proud of your work and through all the years, and wish you a happy, healthy, and very, very long, enjoyable retirement with your family and friends. And it's just a little awkward in terms of virtual, but certainly I would sort of a round of applause for Lee, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do I speak? Or?
Yes, please.
Oh, yes. I want to thank you for the opportunity to work here for the last 50 years. I really enjoyed it, and I want to say thanks to Paul. Paul, I remember when I went to Puerto Rico, when you saw us off and when you came back, and remember those cookies there at the airport, and you are certainly a man of integrity to do that, and I want to appreciate everything you've done and this company has done for me, and it is the best place I've ever worked for, and I want to say thank you for the opportunity to work here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Lee, and congratulations.
Thank you.
That's an amazing career that you've had, and we're grateful to you.
Enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you.
That's pretty neat. That's the point. Okay, if we can move to the consent agenda, are there any questions, comments from any of the members that would like to review anything specific in the consent agenda? And if not, could we get a motion to approve?
Move the motion.
Second.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the consent agenda is adopted. Now we'll move into item 4 for board consideration. First, let's look at the monthly operating and financial summary. Brian Roche, can you help us with that?
Yes, Chairman Baker. Thank you for the opportunity. We will produce a monthly operation finance summary in the board package. We stick on the safety slide. You can go to the next slide. We'll be fine, Eric. Every month, and today's version is a little bit of a hybrid. I think, working with the board, Paul has decided, and with the board, every month an agenda. Sometimes we'll do scorecards. Sometimes we'll do more in depth with Rick Erickson from electric and Haivu from water, wastewater, and Bruce Dugan representing the customer scorecards, and go more in depth in the details. So today's a little bit of a hybrid, and we want to stay focused on the safety one. As Paul mentioned, Chairman Baker, the performance this year is unbelievable at 0.5% recordable incident rate. And what that means, that IRI in the industry, is for a 1.0 is basically 1%, or 1 in 100 employees would be injured at an OSHA recordable throughout a year. In a company like JEA with 2,000 employees, 1% would be 20 people would go home with an OSHA recordable over a year time. This 0.57% is remarkable, where it'll be about 11 or 12 on an annual basis. We're at 9 year to date right now. Historically, in the blue chart shows that most years we were at about a 1.5. Some years we did, had up in the high 2s, and there were some years a little bit lower than 1.5. You look at really what this is. It's a testament of JEA's got 2,000 employees, and 1,000 people at least work in heavy industrial work every single day. And is that testament, like Leah, 50 years, where the folks who do this work have always been the foundation of JEA. They are the foundation of JEA, and they work in difficult situations 24/7. 365 days and nights, and doing it safety is the most important thing, to go home to your family, to go home to so you're back to work the next day and serve our customers. And I did want to hover on this one more than normal with this excellence performance, and especially during these COVID times. And I think it's a testament for a decade worth of work to get where we are, and we need to stay there. The industry average, at the bottom left, municipal utilities is up about a 5.3, which is 10 times more than what JEA is at this year. Some of the best-in-class utilities around the country are about the 1.0, and that's where we want to make sure one injury is too many, but this is really a great story. So we'll go to the next slide, please. We will focus today more on the financials and the details, and the operational scorecards are about slide 11 through 13. We'll just touch on those, but wanted to give a little more backdrop of where we are. So start up on the left. We are at our forecast this year is going to be right about 12 million megawatt hours. The chart on the left shows over the last decade, that's generally where the megawatts are. Some years it's up and down due to weather, customer growth. We had a large wholesale customer that started to lower load in around FY15-16 and left the service territory on FY17. That was in Nassau County. It was a 10 or 20-year contract on wholesale. So what we have fortunate here, the bottom left, is customer growth. On the electric side and the water both are right about 2%. It says 1.9. That's where we're at, and we're very fortunate in Northeast Florida for that. You look at where we are on the right-hand side month by month, comparing FY20 on the right and FY19 on the left. Up until March, we were slightly ahead of last year. And then with the COVID impacts on the third quarter, you look at April was 5% below, May 11% below, and June 4%. Right now, Ricky's been monitoring the load, and it looks like we're going to be on pace July, very close to last July. So we forecast to be right around the 12 million megawatt mark by the end of the year, maybe slightly less. depending on weather. And then overall, you look at the bottom right, that 2.3% reduction from last year is mostly driven by commercial. Our small commercial business in our community have taken a big impact, and large commercial with the COVID. Residential is kind of holding its megawatt hours. So next slide. What does the megawatts do? It drives our unit sales and it drives our revenues. So top left corner, we note that our current year revenues are down $67 million. But before we think about that in a traditional business where the top line growth is everything, we will look at the next two bullets. Fuel revenues are down $38 million. So those are pass-through costs that our customers save. So that's a good story. When those revenues are down on the fuel, our customers save. It's just less revenues and less expenses. A lot of that goes to the $24 million fuel credit in the month of May that our customers had when JEA has probably 5 or 6 times over the last 7-8 years instituted a fuel credit at certain times, and it's been a pretty good program for our customers and innovative for JEA when it was put in place. Paul put that in place. Our lower sales and our base revenues are down $23 million. Those are real revenues that are mostly impacted because of COVID. We also have a little bit down on investment income with interest rates being low in our investment portfolios. Certainly save tons of money on our debt service, and Joe will go through a presentation on that. But we also then, on the offset, less degree, lose money on our investment income. One thing I want to circle in green, it shows a $25 million number in prior period revenues, and FY19, $109 million. What those are is prior year, we were able to have a balance in our budget, and we used that to pay down early debt retirement at the bottom. So we forecast this year to use $25 million to pay down part of a early debt retirement, in addition with $30 other million. At the bottom, you see $55 million circled in green. Those are good things that happened. Last year was actually $109 million used to pay down debt early. Our expenses are lower. I think the biggest one, well, it's not circled, is fuel expenses are $327 million this year forecast compared to last year at $426. That's approximately $100 million a year less than the forecast. World markets on fuel, whether it's natural gas, oil, or whatever it is, it has gone lower, and the customers benefit. Our O&M expenses are higher by 5.5%. It's even a little bit higher on a percentage basis than water wastewater. A lot of that has to do with some of the leftover expenses on the ITM related issues, and also the COVID expenses on cleaning supplies, protective gear for our employees, and medical testing. Our debt service, lower in FY20, good story. That's basically early debt retirement that was programmed in a few years back, and that's extended through 2026. And I think really something important at the bottom, we tie together a $252 million, it says R&R and OCO. That's funding available for capital program, and this year's capital program at the bottom is estimated to be $220 million. To fully fund your capital program from current year revenues in any business is a very strong capital, very strong financial performance. Our pricing policy shows that you should look at borrowing money for substations, generation plants, large transmission, basically houses and cars. And this, we're basically paying cash for everything through current year revenues for our capital program over the last several years and next several. Can you turn the slide, please? Go to water wastewater, same 2 slides. Basically same story, except I think really the interesting one on the left is the purple or reclaimed color. We call it purple pipe in the industry. But you look on water wastewater, the first blue bar, the lighter one is water, represents water. And it's in 40,000 million gallons, or we peaked up about 39 billion gallons of sales a year. Off from memory, I think we actually peaked a little bit higher a couple years earlier. And then during the recession, a lot of things went on in conservation where customers use less gallons per customer every year. And that's throughout the state. And Jacksonville's been very good with that. So you look at about a consistent growth over the last 7, 8, 9 years. This year, year to date, it's a 2.2% growth in customer counts in the bottom left. Our unit sales is 2.9%, generally driven by the customer growth. The rainfall is about even the last couple of years. Rainfall can definitely impact your water sales tremendously on any year. And then again, on the reclaim, we're up to almost 20 million gallons a day, which would get you to about 4 billion gallons a year. Where we were in year 2000 was 0 reclaimed. and now we're at closer 20 years later at 20 million gallons a day. And that's a great story. The drivers, basically across the board, commercial down slightly, residential consumption's up. Next slide, please. We talked about the drivers. So what does it do? It drives revenues, top left, top right. It shows that $6 million in green. Our revenue forecast is $6 million higher this year than last year. That's about 1.5%. The next big thing to point out is our prior year revenues. We have $34 million from the balance from prior year that's been used to pay off debt early, in addition to scheduled principal payments of debt service. So that $34 million that we're forecasting will help out long-term debt service to keep our rates low for our customers. Expenses up 8% on O&M, up to $170 million, similar issues that we had on the electric. And then debt service is lower in FY20 and through FY22 through prior early debt service retirement. It's about $77 million this year. Long-term, the debt service, when we go into financial projections and future meetings, is about $120 million over the next decade every year after FY22. Again, on the water sewer, this year, which might be the last year for a while, that we're going to fully fund the capital program out of current year revenues. $223 million is available to fund through the $198 million forecast on capital expenditures. So that extra money of $25 million we use for to carry over to next year when our capital program continues to grow in water wastewater. And we are working the next presentation about how to keep that capital program under control. But it is good that we're fully funding our capital program this year through current year revenues. Next slide, please. This is a history of our debt to asset and our total debt. On the left, the electric system. It peaked at about $4.3 billion approximately 10 years ago, down to 1.9 or almost slightly under 2 billion at this point in time. The debt to asset ratio is the blue line that peaked up over 90% and now is in the low 6%. Our peer ratio through large municipal utilities is about a 46%. We're not quite to our peer ratio, not quite to our internal target of 50%. We'll continue to grow or move towards that lower debt to asset ratio that we are targeting. And then the water wastewater, which is a different scale. We'll probably in future months put these on the same scale. It's half scale as the electric, but we peaked at $2.1 billion of debt in 2011, and now down to 1.2 or 1.3 billion. The debt to asset ratio is very, very strong in the water wastewater in the low 40s. The peer ratio is 49%. And overall, the debt peaked at $6.4 billion a decade ago, and it's about almost 50% lower at this point in time at $3.3 billion. Good story. Next slide. And this is a schedule. We won't go through the details of it, of the various different debt, how much is fixed, how much is variable. We looked at both the electric system. We have some remaining debt on St. John's Power Park. But overall, the debt outstanding on electric shows the details of $2.014 billion. It is $184 million lower than last year. It dropped down about an inch in the gray box. We're sewer at 1.288 at this moment, and which is $100 million lower, both through scheduled principal payments. That was $55 million October 1st, plus early retirement of $45 million 8 or 9 months ago. So it's just a schedule of different presentations over time. When the board likes, we'll go into more details of the various different debt portfolio that JEA has. Go ahead, next slide. And to sum it up, this is really the first of 4 scorecards. This is the financial scorecard. It's all in green. The middle column is our forecast this year, debt service coverage, days of liquidity, which includes the one below, the true cash on hand, plus JEA has a $500 million revolving credit facility that we allocate 80% on electric and 20% on water, wastewater for this purposes. And that's how the rating agencies view our liquidity. So it's 344 days of liquidity. Our target's 150 to 250, so we're clearly over that target. Our debt service is almost twice as high as our target. Our challenge over the next decade will be fixed charge coverage, and debt service coverage is going to remain strong in our projections. Our debt to asset ratio, again, our target is 50%. We're at 61 right now. That could be either green or yellow, depending on what we want. We're on forecast to meet what we expected. We're not quite to our long-term target. So short-term, we're green. Long-term, we're kind of a yellow check mark there. Water, wastewater, same story on the 4 main metrics, and all doing well. Moody's, S&P, and Fitch rates the water system single A, double A plus, and the water system and electric, A plus, and double A. So we were triple A in water wastewater. Hope to get back there one year. And it really, the water wastewater system is one of the strongest in the country financially, and bar none. So great performance by the team over the last decade and continuing this year. Next slide, please.
Brian.
Go ahead, sir, Bobby.
Yeah, can you just, next time we review these, just put what the peer ratios are?
Yes, on all the metrics, we will do that, Bobby. And I think for the next 2 months, we're going to try to recreate a standard supplemental package. We'll have the detail and we'll have the scorecards, and we'll be able to go talk to whatever questions you have on that. And we do have that information. We'll do that, Bobby.
Not a hurry, just be helpful. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Brian, this is John Baker.
Yes.
Do we have any other opportunities to refinance debt? I've looked at the hedged variable rate. They're obviously very high, but are there prepayment penalties that prohibit us from doing anything with that?
Yeah, well, we are working a lot in the last several weeks to have our long-range projections. Spent a few hours on it yesterday morning with Joe and his team and Julie's, and we are looking over next year. There will be more opportunities, maybe not as great opportunity as Joe's going to recap again today on the final refunding, but there are opportunities to refund it. We do have some available cash to do that, to look at how our debt service goes in the future with the unprecedented historical low interest rates in the country. We have opportunities. JEA has always been a forefront on callable bonds, not only having the standard 10-year, but also having 5-year callable bonds. A lot of those have been taken advantage of here recently, but Joe's team is continuing to look, and we believe we still have some more opportunities out around the next 6 months and over the next year and continuing forward.
Thank you.
This scorecard on electric, really, to do it justice, it needs 5 or 10 minutes and some backup slides, and I believe we'll have Ricky and do that in the future. But from a scorecard perspective, our sales forecast is down in red. But it's kind of where we expected. We forecasted 12.2 a year ago, and we're at 12.0. So in the long term, we're really where we expect outside of COVID. And then the safety number, of course, is green. Our outage performance, and we have several different metrics, where safety, and we'll go into those details in future board meetings, similar to Ricky did on the fuel meeting last month. But overall, very good performance there. Generating fleet is barely, we put it yellow on our forced outage rate at 2.36%, but we're right in the money to get that back in the green. Our environmental compliance with only one extinguisher, great. So we'll go to the next slide on water wastewater, similar real high level update. The only one that's red was a water plant outage, and while I wasn't here, we had a large outage a few months back out by Racetrack Road. We had one 3 years ago. It's a part of a system that if you have a large leak, it has a lot of water going out, and the customers in that region have to have a boil water notice because it's such a large leak. You have maybe 10 million gallons a day flow for several hours, and then it lowers the pressure in the system. So that's what that represents. Sanitary sewer overflows, that's currently being measured in the past year as the number of SSOs per 100 miles of pipe, I believe. We'll probably go back to the just a hard number unit number. We're looking at about 25 SSOs this year that have impacted U.S. waters, and there's different categories on that I can talk about in the future. With JEA having more pump stations than any utility in the country, about 1,450, we are challenged with that system. It's a great system, but with 1,450 pump stations, 4,000 miles of sewage, there are going to be some incidents, and our job is to minimize them and to mitigate them when they happen. Very strong performance compared to utilities across the country. We do have benchmark slides on that in the future, that JEA is really the best of class in that large utility spectrum. Next slide. And then customer satisfaction. Bruce Dugan, and his team are expert on JD Powers. JEA has been first quartile in the past, both on business and residential. The residential's in red right now. The bottom left shows the ratings of customer service, power quality, billing and payment, communication, price, and corporate citizenship. Certainly, the backdrop of the publicity and challenges of the last several years has caused a undercurrent or overcurrent that's impacts the customer view of JEA. Our goal is to get that back up to the first quartile. Net write-off bad debt expense last year was 0.12%. Been that way in the industry, and JEA best of class. But basically, since 2012, this year we're forecasting to be more of 0.25%. With COVID, we know we're going to have impact on the allowance or doubtful accounts. We're looking at to allocate that allowance closer to the 2010, 2011, 2012 recession period of time while we can continue to work. Do want to say that the residential commercial, Bruce's team and Sheila Presley, Robert Grocox's team has done a great job on providing options to our customers during these trying times. The city's got to put a plug in that $10,200 utility cards passed out, and Bruce knows the number to the penny, but like 4,100 customers paid $200 exactly. So we know those cards are getting used. A very successful program the community worked together on, and really just doing any option we can to help our customers out to keep the electricity and water running, water sewer run at this point in time. Final two slides. The rate benchmarks. JEA is in the middle of the pack or slightly lower the middle pack on electric. The one on the left is a little bit misleading. Jacksonville Beach Municipal, we'll correct this next month. They had a fuel, basically a fuel credit or a bulk power adjustment credit 1 month. So that's a little bit misleading. They're closer to where Miami FPL is on the left. So when you look at that, there's maybe $5 or $7 per 1,000 kWh differentiating all the utilities on the left-hand side of that chart, which is the favorable side. The color in maroon is public service tax. The color in yellow is a franchise fee, which is for the 4 IOUs in the state and JEA. JEA, the old municipal utility that has a franchise fee, getting passed on through the city to the customer, about $40 million a year. Overall, good rates for JEA, according to its peers. Next line on the water wastewater. Water wastewater continues to move to the left over the last decade, staying steady, and other utilities have serious water wastewater commitments they need. And that is for a 6,000 gallon, 5/8-inch meter customer. We have about 100,000 customers that have kind of grandfathered into that. Newer customers use 3/4 inch meter. In the future, we'll text box or we'll put that on there, which is several clicks to the right. And the water wastewater is challenging to the benchmarks because different utilities have different minimal size for their smallest customers. So this is a standard one that used in the industry, and JEA is very favorable here. So apologize for going through that a little bit fast.
No.
We have a lot of slides, and as the future, the board will give Paul feedback, and we'll modify this presentation ever how the board sees fit that you like to see at different times and different levels of detail. We felt like it's very appropriate to give a good backdrop today of the financials of where we stand now. Any questions? I'd love to take them.
The one thing, Brian, it's worth notice on the FP&L electrical rates, they've got 4 old nuclear plants down in South Florida that at some point going to have to be retired. So those are fully depreciated units. And so, understanding, I think our electric rates are right where they need to be. So good job. Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair Stein. And, there was many years or decades, JEA was either the lowest in the state or right next to it. And our rates are very competitive, as you can see, and will continue to be that way going in the future. We project. Thank you. Any other questions from board members?
Brian,
Okay. Excuse me, Chairman Baker.
Would you present the adjustments to the 2021 budget? We have an action.
Yes, sir. Yes, Good story, quick one. Next presentation. So May 18th, I wasn't back at JEA yet, but the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, we prepared, go ahead and turn the next slide, Eric, please. Top left, we prepared the proposed operating capital budget. I know Paul proactively stated that we had a lot of work to do on that. Met back with the team and on June 23rd board meeting, produced a reduction of $19 million on the O&M side and $65 million on the capital. That's the left-hand column that says May 18, 2020, starts with the finance audit, and then the middle one shows where we were on last month at this board meeting. We took the challenge to go back to team. We worked, and we also reduced another $3 million on O&M and $38 million on capital. But we're not stopping there. We're still doing work at this point in time. I know the capital has gone down a little bit at that point in time. I do want to note, while we only reduced $3 more million since last board meeting, we did do two of the things that added $7 million. So we started off with a $10 million reduction. We added $3 million in for, definitely on Q1 next year for additional COVID-related supplies and cleaning expenses. We want to make sure we had a line item for that. We'll manage through it, but we put $3 million aside for that. Not defined exactly how that's going to be spent, but we know we will have extra PPP and related type expenses. Also, we put $4.2 million in feedback from the board and the council as a specific line item for last month's pay per performance. The way we do it, we can do it various different ways, but make sure there's an explicit line item for it. The pay performance next year in FY21 could be a maximum of $8.3 million, estimated at the 5% of salaries of the staff outside the SLT and the CEO. And half those metrics are related to customer service and safety, and other half related to specific O&M savings. So from a budget perspective, we put the line item that we believe is probably a closer forecast of the ones that are not specific O&M savings, but it's transparent. We provided that to the council auditor's office, and we'll work with the council members on any questions on that. So we did have a reduction of $10 million, and then finally net $427 million is the O&M line item. And then the capital is the big one. If you look at over the last 6 weeks, the team has reduced the O&M by $22 million, but the capital of $103 million respectively since the May 18th Finance Committee. $125 million, that's a significant chunk that the team worked and took out expenses. And we continue to look forward over the next months before October 1 and throughout the year to minimize our expenditures for our customers. Any questions from the board?
Paul, would you
great job with you.
Paul, would you comment on the CapEx? I mean, are we going too lean, or are we getting rid of things that really could be gotten rid of?
That's a great observation, and we have thoughtfully made these reductions in looking at appropriately right-siding the needed capacity over the next 5 to 10 years. We felt in some of the plans they were going out. We were building today what we needed 20 years in the future. So that's a little bit of a reduction. We have looked at 2 major projects and felt that the cost per unit of construction, gallons, or in most cases on the water sewer side, were way outside of the norm. And so costs have inflated dramatically over the last couple of years. And we've pulled back on those 2. There were 2 other major projects that were just either very lead edge, outsourced to others, felt it was increasing cost for JEA, plus increasing risk, and we pulled those back, and we're going to review and essentially make our bet on the internal JEA folks. So all of the reductions have been thoughtful and balancing back the utilities need for capital, need to invest into achieve our reliability and safety metrics, and reduce a little bit of the wants in terms of the hopes and dreams of what we might have available to us. We just have to balance that appropriately, but I think we're in good shape, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. That's
If I can, Chairman Baker and Paul, add one more item for a financial metric. That water wastewater number at 328, and our target is right under 300 million. The total asset base on water wastewater is about $3 billion. So that's a 10% investment just in 1 year of the total asset base. Our depreciation on water wastewater is $170 million. Depreciation on electric is slightly under 200. So both numbers, and the water is significantly over depreciation, almost double depreciation. And so I think that's a good financial metric that reinforces the answer to your question, Mr. Baker.
thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, I want to congratulate the team. You are all kind of scurrying to get the budget prepared. So I just want to thank you for doing a great job and going back, especially with your CapEx attention and pencil sharpened there. And I believe this is an action item. So I would move to approve the budget adjustments as presented to City Council.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second motion.
I'll reiterate that this was a great job in a short period of time to work through this capital plan.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to quickly we are spending, and I might be wrong on these numbers, but close to $600 million, and we're borrowing $250 million. With the debt markets where they are, should we consider borrowing more? And that's just a question. Brian, do you have?
Under that.
We are working in the Finance and Audit Committee. I think it's August 14th. We will show the financial projections, and also that will be a item of discussion. One thing we're looking at is from the pricing policy that Joe Arfano presented last month, and it's been worked on over the last 15 years, is to look at borrowing money for new generation transmission substation on the electric side, environmental projects, new plants. So certainly from a pricing policy, good utility rate making, borrowing is certainly available there. And we will look at different periods of time where that borrowing is, and we'll bring that to the board over the next month between the committee and the board. And there's some areas where we believe we should be borrowing. This next year's budget does not have borrowing. Somebody please correct me, Joe or Paul, if I'm wrong. We don't have any borrowing, or help me out on that.
That's correct.
Nothing in electric.
That's correct. Yep. And we also, the other thing is Joe's team looks at using our revolving credit facility. Sometimes that we do need to look also to balance that. While the revolving credit is, maybe 1% interest, we're paying no principal. We also may be looking, as I think the board mentioned, when should we lock down this long-term historically low rates for 20, 25, 30 years. So I believe that to be a big discussion with the board over the next several months. We'll get that together for you.
Great. Paul, this is a big opportunity, and we should put a lot of calories to figure out what's best to do.
Mr. Chair, we're going to go to the next agenda item.
Jody, this is Landon. We're getting garbled audio. I'm going to go ahead and hit your line. We'll go ahead and see if you can reconnect through the call me back feature or the dial in option. Ontario is on standby to assist.
You guys go on to the next item on. Can you hear me at all?
Jody, we're still unable to understand you from this end. Mr. Chair, I think what was listed was to move on to the next on the agenda item. I see that she has responded via text, not via text, but via the chat room feature. She has indicated that we should proceed to the next item.
Okay. Thank you. She's our time conscience, I assume. Joe, can you walk us through the debt management policy and the investment policies?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chair Baker and JEA board members. This is Joe Orfano. Eric, if we could go on to the next slide, please. I'm delighted to present the results of our recent bond offerings. This slide has been updated for actual bond refunding results achieved. We launched the water and sewer system bond offering on July 8th, followed by the electric system offering on July 9th. Both transactions were extremely well received by investors, as the water and sewer bond offering was 7 times oversubscribed, while the electric system offering was 6 times oversubscribed. The tremendous demand allowed us to tighten spreads significantly, providing $16 million in additional NPV savings relative to last month's levels. To put that $78 million of total NPV savings into perspective, it represents an increase of about 18% over the savings, the $429 million in cumulative savings since we began refunding bonds in earnest back in 2012. So just a phenomenal offering. Further, the bond refundings will allow JEA to realize approximately $4.6 million in annual debt service savings over the 20 years of remaining bond maturities. So just a tremendous testament by investors of this JEA board and new senior leadership team. Couldn't have been more ecstatic. And JP Morgan led the electric system offering, including 6 other of our underwriting banks, and Morgan Stanley led the water and sewer system deal. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll entertain any questions.
Say a great job, Joe. Yes.
Thank you, Bobby.
Keep digging.
To answer Brian had a tremendous answer. We've been, a number of our deals in the past have had 5-year par calls. In addition to the standard, what's more standard is 10 years. So every 6 months, we hawk over and look for economic NPV savings targets in line with the delegation resolutions that this board has approved in the past and will approve in December. So we constantly look for refunding opportunities.
Okay, if there are no further questions, can you go into the investment policy?
Yes, sir. We'll start with the debt management policy.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Or Jerry, thank you. So next slide, please. So on the debt management policy, this was initially established back in May of '03 and has been amended several times. Most recent amendment was approved by the JEA board in September of last year. The most substantive recent change was to eliminate a reserve fund. It was a debt management rate stabilization fund for our variable rate debt for both the electric and water and sewer systems, representing approximately $30 million for the electric system and $14 million for the water and sewer system. And Brian spoke about those transactions earlier. A marked version of the September 2019 debt management policy is attached to this presentation. The debt management policy sets forth parameters and provides guidance regarding the following issues: capital structure, credit ratings, tax regulation compliance, floating interest rate risk management, and the management of interest rate hedging instruments. Next slide, please. The main goals of the debt management policy are as follows: to maintain a cost of capital consistent with other AA-rated municipal utilities, to maintain stable credit ratings for each JEA system, to establish and maintain reserve funds, to reduce put risk on floating rate debt, and that's the risk of investors putting the securities or not investing in these short-term variable rate securities, and also to maintain diversification of debt. The responsibility for this policy rests with the JEA board, and the policy is implemented by the CFO and the treasurer. An oversight committee, which is called the Debt and Investment Strategy Committee, meets semi-annually to review performance and to develop strategy for the JEA debt and investment portfolios. The authorization for new debt rests again with the JEA board and also with City Council on an as-needed basis. We last went before Council in 2008 for the electric system and 2007 for water and sewer, and we'll likely be going back before Council in the next year or two. Still plenty of capacity on the electric side, about 465 million, but on water and sewer, we're down to about 218 million. So we'll be going before this board and Council for what we call new money authorization. Next slide, please. The annual capital budgeting process that this board has recently been through forms the basis of new money debt to be issued during the 5-year projection period for each JEA system. The issuance of subordinated debt is limited to the financing of new generation, new transmission, substations, as Brian mentioned earlier, for the electric system. But for water and sewer, I'm sorry, I was thinking about financing in general for capital. Subordinated debt is purely for generation assets. So we'll issue subordinated debt and then senior debt for everything else. In the water and sewer system, senior and subordinated bonds can be used to finance all types of CapEx. We will endeavor at all times to issue tax-exempt debt, though certain market conditions may make taxable debt issuance more attractive. As a side note, there's a considerable amount of taxable debt currently being issued by municipal entities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The debt management policy goes into significant detail with respect to fixed versus variable rate debt, interest rate strategy to include interest rate hedging, credit ratings, debt service reserves, bond insurance, compliance and reporting requirements, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the debt refunding parameters. Next slide, please. So take a look at our variable rate exposure in accordance with this debt policy. I know we've shown this a few different ways in the past, but for our variable rate debt, we look at both unhedged and hedged variable rate debt. So for instance, on the electric side, we have 587 million, or approximately 29% of our portfolio is variable rate debt. Fixed rate debt, $1.4 billion, representing about 71%, for just over $2 billion in total debt. So from the total variable rate debt, we subtract our net variable rate assets, which is our investment securities that mature in less than 1 year, to look at true net variable rate debt, which for the electric system, approximately 83 million, representing 4.1%. Water and sewer, about 11%, 141 million, or 11%. And that's against a policy limit of 30%. So while water and sewer has a little bit more net variable rate debt, still quite comfortable in terms of where we are relative to our policy limits. And over to the right, DES, District Energy System, all of its debt is fixed at this point. So that's the completion of my prepared comments on the debt management policy, Mr. Chair.
Questions of Joe?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Joe DeSalvo. Hey, Joe, who chairs the Debt and Investment Strategy Committee? I'm just ignorant to it. Thanks.
That's a great question. Mr. Paul McElroy heads that committee. Brian Roach is a CFO and integral member, and myself, and we do invite members of my Treasury team to present. Chris Cicero on the debt side and Tom Davis who manages our investment portfolio. And I believe we have an audit service member as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with interest rates this low, I would look at seeing where the opportunities are to fix some of this debt. And I know we just never historically have seen these rates.
Well, I think that's what they said they're going to be looking at for the next couple of months. So I encourage that exercise as well.
Yeah, and that's not an agenda item for the Finance Committee meeting, correct?
Is that correct, Joe?
We have an item.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, Jody.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
We have an item to discuss our financial projections, so we'll be discussing it.
Board Member Lanahan, we'll make sure in your Finance Audit Committee that we have several items specifically related to that underneath the financial projection item.
Hand in hand, right? So that I presumed that we would. Thank you.
If there are no further questions, can you move on to the investment policy, please, Joe?
Yeah, I will do this very quickly as well. Thanks, Eric. If we could go to the first slide 2. So the investment policy is based on Florida Statute Section 218.415 and our bond resolutions for our various systems. The main objectives of the investment policy are as follows. This really is 1A, 1B, 1C, safety of capital, which is also referred to as preservation of capital. Very important. Secondly, liquidity. Thirdly, obtaining the highest yields consistent with safety of capital and liquidity of the portfolio. And finally, the diversification of investments. Responsibility for the investment policy rests with this board, with input from the CFO and treasurer. As I mentioned earlier, an oversight committee, the Debt and Investment Strategy Committee, meets semi-annually to review performance and to develop strategy for the JEA investment and debt portfolios. Next slide, please, Eric. JEA's investment policy was initially established in 1995 and has been revised several times over the years. Most recent revision was approved by the JEA board in January of 2020. The approved version is attached to this presentation. Below is a timeline of the relatively substantive changes since 2008. In 2008, we allowed for money market fund purchases in all JEA systems and added Table 1, a summary of the investment limitations. In 2011, in response to the downgrade by S&P of the U.S. Treasury bonds to AA+ from AAA, that AAA credit rating requirement for U.S. agency issues was eliminated, as allowed under each system's board resolutions. In 2016, we allowed investments in intergovernmental pools not administered by the state of Florida, for example, offered by Public Financial Management, and also permitted investments in commercial paper issued by the Government of Canada and also of Canadian provinces. In 2019, we increased the limit of this prior category, the intergovernmental pools, to 20% of cash and investments from 15%. Also provided some definitional enhancements for JEA debt versus non-JEA debt. And then 2020, we eliminated the percentage limit for cash in the bank on March 31st and September 30th. We pre-fund until the next day the debt service requirements on April 1 and October 1. So we eliminated that restriction for the prior day so that we'd have cash sufficient to handle these debt service payments. Next slide, please, Eric. So here's a snapshot of the investment portfolio as of June 30th. It's a high-quality, diversified portfolio with a yield of 1.26% on June 30th. We have intentionally shortened maturities due to the COVID-19 pandemic, as the portfolio has a weighted average maturity of 1.6 years, and we'll continue to keep that short in light of these yields. I'd note that U.S. Treasury and agency money market funds were a whopping 0.13% on June 30th, which is pretty consistent with the 90-day T-bill rate on that date. So we're looking to stay short, and we'll extend out as opportunities arise. But for instance, on the municipal bonds, it's a high-grade portfolio of AA and AAA securities. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Thank you, Joe. That's great.
Thank you. You're welcome, sir.
Brian, will you go to the utility rate making presentation, please?
Yes, Chairman Baker. Real short one. There was a request several months ago for the team to look at, are there some webinars or some sort of background instructions and training, in a sense, on utility rate making. So we reached out to APPA. Several over the decades have certainly attended a American Public Power Association rate making, cost of service, revenue requirement course, and they have various different titles. So we reached out to the main consultant who's been the leader of the instruction on that. And we looked through several different options. One is, do they do it back, a 10-minute presentation on it? So we wanted to start on providing these 3 webinars that the team reviewed several weeks ago. I went through them this weekend. They are, the first 2 are 90 minutes, the second one 60. They did a remarkably good job on summarizing the rate-making principles. And certainly anytime we go forward and over the time to look at any sort of rate changes, adjustments, we will work with the board. We will go into more detailed discussions, the Finance and Audit Committee, and then the full board. But I believe this certainly for information purposes met that request. And I think the first 2, you could scroll through the slides rather quickly. The third one, while it's a good presentation, you have to go through the webinar at its pace. And any questions you have on this, you certainly can call myself, and we will. And Paul has a great background on this also. We will send specific instructions for the link later today to each of the board members independently, and also some instructions on some voice control, so you don't have double voices on the presentation. But wanted just to provide that for information to the board.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Bruce Dugan, can you go into the customer relationship update?
Thank you, Chair Baker. Good morning, JEA board members. I'm Bruce Dugan. I wanted to talk with you about some of the COVID impacts, the challenges, and our response. So you'd have some details about that. Let's go to the next slide. This is a timeline just to remind you of where we were and what we've done over the last several months. Back in March, we discontinued certain customer fees, and we suspended disconnections for non-payer or past due accounts. Normal business is represented by that bullet as well, about 2,000 disconnection eligible customers and only 7 business accounts at that time. Over the next 3 months, that would grow to over 24,000 customers who were eligible for disconnect, and almost 1,000 of those were business customers. So at that point, after Florida had reopened for business and the economic shutdown had been somewhat reversed with some restrictions, we announced that we'd begin disconnections again on the 7th, and we began a heavy period of communication with our customers, both directly and indirectly. After that communication, the city of Jacksonville came up with a great plan on a way to use some federal funding, and we were the facilitators of that for them. And so on July 2nd, we opened that up. That was 10,000 cards, $200 each, to help our customers catch up on their past due accounts. By July 10th, we had postponed resuming disconnects until July 10th. But on that date, we were down to 17,000 accounts disconnection eligible. And we started disconnections at that point. I'll tell you that since July 10th, we've only disconnected just under 3,000 customers. We did that very slowly, deliberately, to give as many customers as possible a chance to get in and take care of their bill. And of those 3,000, only about 186 remain disconnected today, and several of those are just vacant. People have left. So I wanted to give you some additional information on reconnections. 38% of customers who are disconnected have been reconnected in an hour or less, 85% in 1 day or less. And so the reconnection rate in total is 93%. So this is what we were trying to do, is keep our customers connected or minimize the amount of time that they were disconnected. And that seems to be happening fairly well. And today, the number of customers that were eligible at the beginning of this morning was 11,285. So we cut that high number in half, mainly through communication, flexible payment terms, reduction in fees, and so forth. So that's a fairly good success story. Now, we hope to be back to normal operations where we'll have numbers closer to the 2,000 per day by the middle of August. So that's our goal. So let me share a couple other things with you. Go to the next slide. You know, navigating this COVID event's been through uncharted water, to say the least. Here's an example. When the city of Jacksonville created the program, JEA facilitated that, but in so doing, we set several records for our JEA customer systems, and you can look at the numbers there. But the bottom line is that the city's plan was innovative and it worked well. In fact, as of today, 51% of those customers have received their card and have made payments of exactly $200 using every penny they were given for their utility bills as the city council intended. So just a grateful thank you to the city of Jacksonville for helping our families that are most in need. By the way, I think this shows the agility and the dedication of JEA's technology and customer relationship teams. And so my hat's off to all of those individuals, and there were many who made that happen. We can go to the next slide. While we were working with our customers, we were also working with our financial assistance community agencies. And so there's a number of those. And to date, we've processed almost 2,000 vouchers, a total $724,000. Many of those were issued by us proactively reaching our customers or working with our agencies to proactively reach our customers rather than waiting for them to call and seek help. So that's partnerships that continues to work extremely well. Next slide. I also want you to know that we're working with United Way to find different ways to raise funds for the customers. We have our neighbor-to-neighbor program, which essentially requires someone to sign up for monthly donations to their electric bill. But we wanted to provide, because COVID is such a novel event, we wanted to provide customers another way they can give a one-time donation. So we're working with United Way and should have something ready in just the next few weeks so that we'll have a program so that customers that can afford to can help their neighbors in a new and a different way. We're working on the creative aspects of that with United Way's team, and hopefully that will be able to help our customers even further. You can go to the next slide. The fact that we've extended payment arrangements, made them more flexible, has helped a lot of our customers. We have 6,751 customers with payment extensions right now. Those that total just under $4 million at $3.9 million. Many of those are for 12 months rather than the standard 3-month period that we typically have in place. The direct assistance to our customers has now exceeded 1.4 million, and that's through the credit card late fees, disconnect or reconnect fees that we have waived. And so direct assistance to customers, again, at over the 1.4 million mark. And then you can go to the last slide. I just wanted to share this information with you today so that each of you would have full confidence that JEA staff is working diligently to help our customers through this difficult period. And, you know, communicating with our customers directly and indirectly, enhancing those payment flexibility, suspending customer fees, and actively working to help customers find financial aid has and will continue to make a difference. We wanted you to know we're committed to making every decision with one goal in mind, and that's to help our customers stay connected to the electric, water, and wastewater services they depend on. And so I hope this information is helpful to you and helps you to have that confidence that we're looking for. So any questions?
Bruce, that's a great job. You guys have taken a very sticky problem and turned it into a wonderful success story. And I think it probably is one of the great reasons why you want to have a municipal utility instead of a business providing you with your power. And you guys have made a difference, and I congratulate you. But this isn't over, so we got to keep working at it.
That's right. Thank you, Chair Baker.
And Chairman, I really want to thank Councilwoman DeFore. Please share back to the City Council our appreciation for your partnership in this effort and your leadership. It's made a meaningful difference in our community. So thank you.
I think it's a great, I mean, as John said, this is why JEA is who they are. And I just want to appreciate everybody that's been involved. So Chairman Baker, your words were great.
Okay, thank you, guys. Let's move on to the Jacksonville Small and Emerging Business Programs. Alan McElroy.
Good morning, Chair Baker and board members. Today, I'd like to be sharing with you our third quarter Jacksonville Small and Emerging Business Program report. I'd like to begin by sharing a little bit of background and some details about the program. JEA has 314 certified JSEB vendors, and we're currently doing business with 88 of those vendors, 7 of which are new since January. The JEA program is governed by city council or city ordinance, I should say, and what it does is it requires city agencies to allocate 18 to 20% of their available spend to certified JSEB certified firms. JSEB is a local small business program and which have 3 ways for participation. 1, sheltered markets for JSEB companies. Sheltered markets are solicitations that only are sent to JSEB companies for participation. 2, JSEB subcontracting in open market solicitations. Our non-sheltered process is to always look at our current JSEB pool to see what trades and skill sets are available for our solicitations. If there's work that can be performed by our JSEB pool, then we will set a mandatory requirement for the prime to meet. We do not tell the prime who to choose, what disciplines, but we can provide some general information as needed. Ultimately, it's the prime's responsibility to meet whatever goal JEA sets. And lastly, open solicitations. A JSEB company has the ability to bid on any solicitation where they can meet the minimum requirements, regardless if it's sheltered or non-sheltered. The value to the JSEB company to participate in open solicitations is the opportunity to potentially get awarded the contract and obviously gain financially from the work. JSEB companies compete in open market solicitations head-to-head with non-JSEB companies and, quite frankly, often win. In a recent example, a newly established JSEB company successfully competed against the incumbent non-JSEB company for landscaping services and is currently saving JEA's customers $390,000 a year. In another example, a JSEB well driller was qualified for work where we have had very limited vendor participation and is now saving our customers money and increasing our capabilities to serve our customers. We have very specific requirements established for potential JSEB companies. Next slide, please. In determining the available project spend, our JSEB manager, Rita Scott, reviews all of the projects slated for the upcoming year and works with our procurement category managers to identify major projects or just identify projects that we believe our JSEB companies are qualified to perform. From those projects where we believe they can perform, we establish a JSEB goal. For FY20, our JSEB spend goal is $17 million. This represents 25% of the available spend, which is higher than the city ordinance requirement. As of the third quarter, the JSEB actual spend is $12.9 million, or 76% of our annual goal. The chart on the right illustrates the progress we've made over the past 5 years. We have consistently increased our JSEB spend each year, primarily based on the volume of the projects that we've been able to include for our JSEB vendors. We expect FY20 to be another good year. Next slide, please. Throughout the fiscal year, JSEB participates in various small business events. With COVID-19, several of these events have either been canceled or held virtually. For the third quarter, we participated in the following. Every month, Rita Scott hosts a Doing Business with JEA workshop on the third Thursday of the month via Webex. This workshop is designed to educate our business, that is any business that is interested in learning how to do business with JEA. In May, JTA hosted a Northeast Florida a small business forum via Webex as well. This was an hour-long event with several dynamic speakers, including JTA's Chief Executive Officer, a representative from the U.S. Small Business Administration, the Chief Lending Officer at ViStar, and the President of Mason Tillman Associates. In June, the Florida 8A Alliance hosted their 9th annual Federal Contracting Conference. And of course, this was virtual. This all-day event provided small businesses with the opportunity to learn about how to do business with, as well as upcoming opportunities from a variety of different companies, including Boeing, NASA, several government agencies, and JEA. Our last outreach event was with Ryan Companies. They hosted a subcontractor event for our new JEA headquarters. The event was held via Webex and was focused on upcoming opportunities to bid on the new building. Ryan Companies has committed to a small business goal of 20% for this project. Next slide, please. JEA has an operating expense of $134,000 per year to support the program. This consists of a $66,000 payment to the city for program administration fees, services, I should say, 63% prorated salary expense for our JEA J7 manager who also performs some other procurement functions, and $5,000 to host outreach events. These expenses are offset by cost savings and increased capabilities from a deeper pool of JEA vendors developed through the J7 program. Next slide, please. So what's next on the horizon for J7? Well, around this time of the year, we would be planning to host our third annual J7 Summit. The summit is typically held in the third Thursday of August. One of the greatest benefits of this summit is the ability for the J7 vendors to interact and network with prime vendors, procurement, and project managers. With COVID-19, this is making such an event a challenge. But contrary to the slide, we're not canceling. We haven't given up hope on conducting a virtual networking event. We are evaluating all potential options. Until we exhaust all potential options, we will continue to be proactive in other areas that can benefit our JSEB vendors. We will be enhancing our website to include the JSEB supplier capability sheet. This is typically a one-pager that outlines all the capabilities JSEB is able to perform. This will not only assist in advertising for the business, but provide a resource for the prime vendors who are seeking to partner with a JSEB company on various projects as subcontractors. We're modifying the JSEB form that is required as part of the bid proposal documentation. The JSEB form currently only requires the prime to sign. However, we believe that it is beneficial for the JSEB to sign this document as well, to loop them in so that they know their company is being included as part of the prime's bid package. This change will be implemented at the beginning of next fiscal year. We are currently focusing on our FY21 budget and upcoming projects. We will be undertaking a deep dive in researching which projects we believe JSEBs can participate in to determine our potential available spend and ultimately our target JSEB spend goal for FY21. And lastly, we want to create an updated JSEB video to highlight some of the great work that's being performed by our JSEBs and also the overall spend we have achieved as a company. Thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Alan. That's a great report and a great story. I think you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you, Chair Baker.
Let's now move on to the ITN invoices. OGC, Steve Tutton, are you there?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Chairman Baker, members of the JEA board. I think we want to move down. The document there starts on 227 of the presentation deck. I'd like to start before I get into the details of the documents to thank those who allowed internal audit not to have to start with a blank canvas. There's a lot of work done on these even before we got engaged about 6 weeks ago. I want to give a special shout out to Joe Arfano because he created the baseline of report for the vendor invoices, both received and paid to that point. And also to the OGCs, Lasikia Hodges and Jean Pimentel. Obviously, they had a lot of insight and guidance for our help for the legal fees. And finally, the two folks on my team who helped with the review, Troy England and Julie Moore, for their invaluable assistance. Obviously, there's a lot of documents, a lot of invoices, a lot of emails, contracts that had to be reviewed. In spite of everybody's hard work, I guess we have to put a caveat out there that yet may be more related documents that none of us have seen. The process kind of probably was contrary to maybe normal vendor and approval flow, but for now, it's pencils down. We're going to work with what we have. We think all the invoices have been identified, but perhaps that's not the case. So let me turn the board's attention to the interoffice memo. I'll kind of move down to the, I think it's already, you can slide down a little bit. The first is just some of the background information as far as the scope of the work that was done. And also the, it also begins with denoting the recommendations for each of the 23 vendors. I think the package that was sent out last week, we amended because the OGC reminded us there were within the Foley and Lardner invoices, there were some for two core reporting firms who I think probably need to be on the faster track for payment rather than being embedded in the further review for the various law firms and consulting firms that might need a more aggregate look. So that's one change. It's about $25,000 that moved into farther down into the table there on the bottom of the first page. But again, 23 vendors, of which we are recommending 16 vendors either have already been fully paid or in this recommendation today, the 1.5+ million dollars. There's 33 invoices represented there that we would like to recommend get paid to those. There's actually, of those 16 vendors, 6 have already been fully paid. So we're really just talking about 10 vendors. And then another thing, if you've noticed on either this document or the spreadsheet behind it, that both some of the paid and referred vendors have already been fully paid, either partially in full, but particularly for those recommended in the legal and the consulting, it's felt like this is management and OGC kind of agreeing that it's probably best to look at the entire, even those that are paid, all invoices, to look at some of the accuracy of the billings. There might be some things with travel costs, potential conflicts of interest, propriety, whatever the case may be, but it's important to kind of look at those all together there. What else do I want to mention here? I've mentioned the court reporter fees. Specifically the 7 vendors, we have 4 legal firms, 1 consulting firm, and then 1 data management, and get the other one here, excuse me. Pull my sheet up here. We can go down to the spreadsheet now, I guess, the second document. Yeah, down at the bottom of the second sheet, the 7th vendor we were looking at is actually a public affairs firm. Interesting thing there is the documentation trail was incomplete, and I think we found out that they were actually brought in by the Dalton agency. So we wanted to look at them, even though they've been paid, just to look at the relationship there, how they came to be involved in the ITN. But again, across the other 10 vendors, we have a total of $1 million, going back up, $1,504,000 and $283.52. Again, represented by 33 invoices that we recommend today. And that's the low end of the estimated remaining payment range. The 1.51 million is those 33 invoices. The high end, the 10.24 million, is actually looking at that 1.5 is included in there. And then the aggregate of the 11.2 for those other 7 vendors, backing out what we've already paid to them, it nets out to the 10.24 million. So it's actually the recommendation on the bottom of the interoffice memo for the board's consideration and approval is first to approve those 33 invoices, the $1,504,000 for payment and we could begin that process with the board's approval. And then also the second part of the recommendation is engaging outside counsel to review and recommend action for the invoices for those other 7 vendors that I think require a referral. Questions on either document?
Steve, why don't we solicit a motion to pay the $1,504,000?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I'll move it.
Second.
Is there discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. Now let's go to the remaining $10,240,000. Are there questions of Steve on those?
Hey, Mr. Chair, Joe DeSalvo, just not a question, just a statement though. Obviously, I think very close scrutiny on how legit these charges are, et cetera, which sounds like the way ahead, obviously. And just, we don't want to rush to failure on this, but just close scrutiny to make sure what's legit, what isn't, just so we're not, giving money to something that was illegitimate on it. Just a comment. Thank you.
That's the point. That's a really good comment. I think you hit it. A contrary point to that is our reputation is important, and we should pay our bills whether we like what they were spent for. If they were hired and legitimately did work that JEA asked them to do, then whether we like the result or not, I think it's important that we keep that in mind. But I think the solution to me seems reasonable, that we would refer it to outside counsel to make sure that we are doing it, that we're both paying what should be paid and not paying what should not be paid after a thorough and honest review.
And to the chair, I want to express appreciation. This was originally, I believe, going to be an agenda item for our very first meeting as a new board. And I think slowing that presentation down to get to the point that we are today has given me a great deal of comfort. So thank you for slowing that process down.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I just add that I hear what you're saying. Our reputation is important, but we also have a fiduciary to our ratepayers, and making sure that, some of these expenses were, past the gray line with what I understand. So I appreciate that we're taking it to outside counsel and make sure that, these are legitimate expenses we should pay.
Okay, can I get a motion to refer these expenses to outside counsel?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second this, Tom Ben also.
Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've got unanimity on the board. Thank you all. This is a tough issue, and we've got to be very careful. And I think because it's big money, and I think we're doing it in exactly the right way. If there are no further questions on that, Bobby, could you give us a CEO search committee report?
Thank everybody for spending the time with Carl, and we are in the process. It has been posted, and Carl and Angie and Joyce are working through candidates, and I think we are processing on time, and I think we're going to have some. It sounds like we will have some very, very qualified candidates moving forward.
What's the next step?
Carl and Angie and Joyce are reviewing candidates, and they're going to start narrowing candidates for the special committee to review. And I think what they're doing is that it's been posted, and now they are reviewing candidates, and we should start getting some type of movement on interviewing, reducing that list, Mr. Chairman. So you'll be seeing that list being reduced in the next 30 to 60 days.
Right. Other questions of Bobby? Joe, could you bring us up to date on your governance committee? I think almost everybody on board was there, but.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a very good first committee meeting. The highlights included first, no issues with our committee's charter that was passed on the 22 June meeting with the board. We also discussed the draft of the JEA board mission, vision, values, goals, and objective paper, and which currently doesn't exist. So we're looking at implementing that one. And by the way, we'll look at our next committee meeting, special committee meeting, of incorporating comments from the fellow board members here, and look to tee this up for full board approval, Mr. Chairman, in the September board meeting. With respect to the current board policy manual, we are going to be editing off the February 2010 edition of it for that, and I've already got some very good recommendations on reformatting and some other things, so that's well on its way. The priority of effort for this will first be the CEO evaluation criteria, so that we can stay current with that, obviously, as we're in concert with the search committee and looking at the new CEO selection. And then also, second priority is the JEA board evaluation criteria, which again currently doesn't exist in the current manual for that. Also, Steve Tooten's audit team will be providing very valuable admin assistance for us with the necessary track changes, et cetera. So that's very much appreciated for that. And for that, again, Mr. Chairman, we look forward for reconvening the committee in August to go final on the mission, vision, values, goals, and objective paper, and also get our first cut at the CEO evaluation criteria and the JEA board evaluation criteria too. And that's all I've got on my end. Thank you.
Questions of Joe? I know that when I looked at the list of things that you all were going to cover, I thought it would be a disaster of a meeting, and it was not, because you were well prepared and led us through it quickly and efficiently, and I really appreciate the job you did. One thing I think we should think about, I noticed in the both the Moody's and the S&P write-ups on our ratings, that they referenced that they thought that we our controls were not sufficient to keep from what happened. And I know that the city council is working on that, but I think this committee ought to just have a close eye on making sure that we do have sufficient and appropriate controls going forward, so that we don't have a recurrence of what happened in the last year.
Yeah, excellent point, Mr. Chairman. Excellent point.
Any other comments or questions? Is there any old business? Is there other new business? Does anyone have any open discussion they would like to go into at this point? Paul, could you give us your report?
Yes, I can, Mr. Chairman. Certainly looking back this last month, we've been heavily engaged in working through the ITN invoices and working on the MEAG litigation and overall project. And so thank you for your support on the ITN item, and look forward to our next topic on MEAG for full discussion with the board. Looking forward, over the next 60 days, a couple things I'll be focusing in on when I wrap up sort of operations, the electric system, water, wastewater, supported by technology. Just further refining and looking at the budget, specifically a little bit more in terms of impact of COVID on our business. Looking at cost structures and the ability to leverage technology solutions for ensuring cost structures and setting some work up for the future, as well as looking at some strategic pathways and opportunities to again set up for the next 6 to 12 months for board consideration. In the area of customer, we'll be doing some work on JD Power. We saw the performance, or at least the results, dropping into the third quartile. Their team is working to assess the most recent surveys results and really what our customers are focused on. And we'll be working on implementing, this is utility-wide strategies and communications to shore up our customer satisfaction and loyalty as measured by JD Power. And finance, as we mentioned, focused on the debt portfolio, really the 5 to 10 year planning horizon, and looking at pricing, not only rates and the financial revenues, but in terms of the actual rate and pricing structures that we have in place in a couple of the systems may be important for the board to look at in the next quarter. In HR, it's COVID operating strategies, 24 hours a day. We are having some success within our workforce in keeping the impact at least minimized and if compartmentalized. We've had a number of folks return back to work and have seen the infection rate drop over the last week. So that's a good sign of the hard work and focus of all of the team at JEA. We'll also be picking up over the next 30, 45 days a reevaluation of all workforce planning. And we had certainly some extraordinary plans in place across the board, looking at recruiting and retention and development of employees, and working closely to and very specifically and strategically to ensure that our utility workforce reflects our community workforce. So Angie and I will be working closely on that in the next 30 to 45 days. That's it, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Questions of Paul? I would just say, Paul, that the list of accomplishments that have occurred since you came on board are amazing. And we've reorganized your top management. We've dealt with Plant Sure. We've issued debt with great savings. We're close to working out a deal on Plant Vogel. We've addressed the new building and came up with a completely modified program. And you've reduced the O&M and capital by $125 million for next year. And all that's just for starters. And I think I'm very proud of the job that you and your team have done. And I think I can speak for the board that we really, really appreciate the progress that's been made and been made quickly.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll pass that right through me onto the great workforce of JEA, certainly the leadership team, but the entire workforce that has given us the support to move as quickly as we have, and is just reflective of the great men and women we have dedicated to public service here at JEA. Thank you.
Okay, Jody, are you ready to take us into the shade meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chair, but actually you've got to take us into shade. By statute, as the chairman of the board, you need to announce that we're going to go into the closed attorney-client session, give the estimated time and the participants that are allowed. I'm not sure if you've got the guidelines that I had sent with the participants, but if you could let the public know that we are going into the attorney-client session. We believe it'll take about an hour, and then there's 14 participants that are allowed. And I'll give board directions after you make that announcement of the folks that are allowed to stay in this Webex meeting. Webex has a unique feature that we're going to move all the other people on this public meeting into a virtual library. A virtual lobby. And they can sit in the virtual lobby while we conduct the shade meeting. And then we will allow them back in when we're done. And I'll be working with Landon. He's going to be the one that's going to physically move the people, the participant list out into the lobby. And Landon, just for your knowledge, our certified court reporter, Stephanie Powers, she's listed on the participant as just Power. And then one of our outside counsel, Rick Tozy, he's on as well, that would stay in as a participant, and he's listed at BHM 34B. And I don't have Tom Van Osdal. If he's called in by a telephone number, it's
I have him, Jody.
identified. Okay, you have him? Okay.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, if do you have the participant list that's allowed to be in the shade meeting that you could read off?
I do not, but let me just say that we will go into the shade meeting. It will last approximately an hour. And Jody, could you read off the list of people that will be in there?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the participants that have been listed on the notice and that are allowed to be in the attorney-client session that we refer to as a shade session is the 7 JEA board members, Chairman Baker, co-assistant or co-chair Bobby Stein, Secretary Marty Lanahan, Joe DeSalvo, Dr. Zachary Faison, and Dr. Leon Haley, and Tom Van Osdal. The Chief Executive Officer, Managing Director Paul McElroy, Attorney Jason Gabriel, myself, Jody Brooks, Tiffany Pinkstaff, Rick Tozy, Steve Busey, and our certified court reporter, Stephanie Powers. So at this time, Landon, if you'll go ahead and move all the other participants that currently are in this WebEx JEA meeting into the virtual library. And from an instruction perspective, if you get out of the WebEx meeting and you're being moved into the virtual library, you can log back on, but you would go directly into the virtual library until such time that we unlock the attorney-client session. Thank you.
Thank you. For all of those that are still within the meeting, we currently have 77 participants still in the WebEx. As Jody mentioned, if you, over the next hour, need to drop out of the WebEx, you will be able to rejoin the WebEx as it will be continuing on. I will be going through the list of the participants in alphabetical order as listed here, unless you are part of the 14 participants allowed to be in the shade meeting. If for those, anyone that is as a participant accidentally gets disconnected, please reach out to Jody or myself while we're going through this. Thank you. Jody, I am now proceeding with locking the meeting. And recording is going to be on pause. Jody, can you please confirm that you are seeing, and we are still live streaming at this point, that you see a pause indicator in the top right-hand side of your WebEx?
I do, Landon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul, when it's appropriate, would you lead this session?
Yes, I will.
Look at extra, like. Oh, I'm on.
For those that are still within the meeting, I'm going to go ahead and mute all lines just in case there's audio feedback. Please stand by. Okay, Jody, I am clicking the resume option now. The meeting is now being recorded.
And Mr. Chair, will you announce that we are out of shade and that we're continuing back through our agenda?
Yes, ma'am. We have had a shade meeting. We are now out of it. And we would go back to the agenda, item 8, for board consideration, the MEAG purchase power agreement, Plant Vogel update. And Jody, you and Paul are to lead us through the action item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in the shade meeting, we talked about a proposed settlement of all the claims with MEAG and their specific deal points that we discussed from a term sheet. That we're not going to talk about the specific terms, but we would like for the board to vote on providing the staff guidance to pursue and approve a mutual beneficial business solution, including the settlement that we just discussed under item 7A, the MEAG purchase power agreement, Plant Vogel, of the City of Jacksonville, JEA, MEAG, and the JEA and MEAG legal dispute surrounding the purchase power agreement that JEA has with MEAG as the Plant Vogel units 3 and 4. And then to continue the relationship and the business spirit of working with MEAG. And Paul, I think you had something you had wanted to add to that as far as the recommendation as the cooperative spirit with MEAG going forward.
Well, I think that the second one was as you indicated there, to thoroughly engage with MEAG to explore mutually beneficial ways to reduce cost and risk at Plant Vogel units 3 and 4, respectively.
And so, Mr. Chair, if I could get a motion and a second to approve a settlement with all the outstanding claims of the 2 pending litigation matters and the cooperative nature that we just discussed.
Motion, make a motion.
We have a motion.
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. I don't believe there is anything else to come before the board meeting unless any of the members have anything they would like to bring up.
Mr. Chairman, this is Paul. Just 15 seconds. There is a storm brewing and heading our way. Just give comfort to the board that we're on top of it. And so it looks as though it'll probably be in the range of northern Florida late Monday or Tuesday at the current pace. Be coming up the eastern side of the state at the current path. So it still needs to form, but we're on top of it. We're watching it every step of the way. We'll be prepared if we have any impacts of it, and we'll keep you updated as we progress. Thank you.
Okay, the next board meeting is August 25th, 2020. And if there's nothing else to come before the board, I declare we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
John.
you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and board members.